guys, this is a segment from the Slumpbuster Podcast. You can find the full episode on any of the various podcast platforms, or, of course, subscribe to us on YouTube for more of our content. Other than that, guys, sit down, bust a slump, and enjoy.
All right, guys, so I'm going to break down the Chargers for you. The Chargers made some pretty big moves this offseason. They bolstered the offensive line by trading for right guard and then even picking up a right tackle this offseason, bolstering that offensive line that was very hurt and very sporadic last year, not giving Philip Rivers time to throw the ball. So now we have the right side of our offensive line set. We're getting Mike Pouncey back from a broken neck, center set. Now we just have to wait for Dan Feeney, hopefully, or Forrest Lamp to hopefully develop into that right or left tackle position that we were really hoping them to be, but injuries have kind of derailed their careers. Hopefully they'll take the step with a solid right side of the line. And then Sam Tevi on the left tackle position is still a question mark for the offensive line. But in general, this offensive line as a unit is 100 times better than it was last year. Bring in Tyrod Taylor, who's not going to throw 20 interceptions like Philip Rivers did last year, even though Philip Rivers, I love the guy. 20 interceptions is very terrible. Now we have Keenan Allen back, we have Austin Eckler back, Hunter Henry back, and Mike Williams, and we're starting to get some speedy receivers. So with Tyrod Taylor not throwing those so many interceptions and throwing the ball to really good position players, you have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, a stable of offensive weapons to get the job done. I see the offense taking a step forward, barring injuries. That has always been the Chargers' biggest concern, has been injuries. We've always been injury prone. It's just how it is. It's the life of a Chargers fan. Now on the defensive side, we brought in a couple linebackers. We also drafted Kenneth Murray in the first round to solidify that linebacking core. On the defensive front, we brought in Linval Joseph, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. Fun fact about him, this will be his third stadium opening in his career. He started with the Giants, beating the Cowboys in their home stadium open way back when he was first drafted. He helped open up the Minnesota Vikings Stadium in Minnesota a couple years ago, and now he's going to be opening up SoFi Stadium with the Chargers. Just a fun little fact for him. Then on the defensive backside, we have Casey Hayward still, all-pro Desmond King as well. Then you bring in the addition of Chris Harris. Nasir Adderley, our second-round draft pick from last year, is going to be finally healthy as our free safety addition. And Mike Quincy is going to be developing as that outside corner. We have a stable defense for our team. With all that said, I see the Chargers going 10-6 on the season, 3-3 in the division, second in the AFC West. Good for a wild card position into the playoffs. They are going to start 6-3 before the bye week. Some pretty weak opponents in there. You have Miami, question mark there. You have the Jets still there. You also have Carolina, a rebuilding year. And you have a bout with Joe Burrow, his first ever NFL game to start the year. You have some pretty easy opponents in that first half. Really, your only tough opponents are going to be the Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Chiefs in that first 9 weeks. Your back end is where you see most of the harder opponents. So I do see them going 6-3 before bye week, finishing 10-6. Good enough to make the playoffs as a wild card.
All right, guys, this is Juju Talk Sports. I'm joined by MMA Dre. Thank you to the Fantasy Aristotle for setting up this segment. We're going to be talking about that AFC West. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Razor Sport and Manscaped.com. That's Razor, R-A-Z-E-R, Sport.com. And Manscaped, use promo code SLUMP to save 20% off, plus free shipping and handling. Okay, Dre, so we get to talk about Aris's Chargers on this podcast. So we promised to rip into them. They had 5 wins last year, which is almost as many fans as they have. Well, that's not a high total to really top, is it?
Nah, not exactly. I mean, you know, when you've got more than 5 fans, in the stands is your goal. It's not a really high bar to set.
And I think they're probably the 5th most popular football team in the city of Los Angeles as it is. But we'll stop living in the past. We'll stop living in San Diego, and we'll stop giving it to Aris on this one. In all honesty, I do think that his team is bound for a turnaround season. So some notable Chargers headlines this year. So they let Melvin Gordon walk. We'll talk about him later. They let Philip Rivers walk. So longtime starter over there for the team, coming off one of his worst seasons of his career. They made some adjustments to their offensive line, which I think will be a huge benefit to them. Breaking news injury-wise, Derwin James suffered a meniscus tear. We talked about Earl Thomas on the last episode. He may come into play again here. Linval Joseph, huge addition to their defensive line. Kenneth Murray, the linebacker of Oklahoma, they traded back into the first round to grab him. Great addition, one of the highest rated linebackers in the draft. Chris Harris, rather than opposing him on the other side, he's actually going to be a part of their team. Joey Bosa got paid this offseason, 5-year, $135 million deal with $102 million guaranteed. So setting all those edge rusher contracts for years to come. Dre, when you think about the Chargers, what are your expectations for them in 2020?
Yeah, I think that, they'll be slightly improved from what they were last year. I think they made some okay moves, right? Especially their defense. I think their defense is going to be fairly formidable. The offense, I still have my questions about it. I don't think it's going to be very explosive or very fun to watch necessarily. But I think they'll be able to compete. And so I have them going sort of middle in the pack. I have them going 7-9 this year.
Aris is going to be super thrilled about this one. I actually have them going 10-6 because on paper, they have one of the best rosters in football. They really do. Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, their defensive backfield, as I mentioned, if Derwin James could get healthy and back on the field this year, and Chris Harris. I love Kenneth Murray. That was a great draft pick. And then Linval Joseph at defensive tackle. My only question is, as you mentioned, how explosive is this offense going to be, and how long before they transition from Tyrod Taylor to Justin Herbert? This isn't a shot at Tyrod, but understand that the last rookie quarterback to not start a game his rookie year was Aaron Rodgers, and that was in the mid-2000s. They're going to want to play him. At some point, they're going to want to play the number 6 overall drafted player. Justin Herbert, I've seen a lot of game tape. He's more athletic than people give him credit for. He was originally the highest graded prospect going into last year's draft prior to Joe Burrow's renaissance season. Of course, Tua, there was injury concerns there. There was even questions of the Miami Dolphins drafting Justin Herbert over Tua. Do I believe that Justin Herbert is the quarterback of the future? That's hard to say just because, again, if you are watching Hard Knocks there, it has been a definite adjustment from going from Oregon football, which relies more on silent counts and not really being a vocal leader, to being in the pros where he's going to have to make a lot of those calls. I do have my questions about Anthony Lynn. And again, watching the show, I've grown to like Anthony Lynn. I respect him as a coach. Obviously, we've talked about the lack of minority head coaches in football before. But at the same time, he's not a play caller on offense for them. He's more of a CEO type coach. And that type of coach has been kind of on the decline over the last few years. So if this team doesn't have a winning season, I think potentially he could be walking out that door. That at least is definitely a piece on the table. How long before you see Justin Herbert step into this season?
I don't know. I think it'll be, I would give it week 8. So past week 8, I think it's, anything goes. But I think they'll give Tyrod at least that much, especially if he's winning and they're able to stay in games like we think that they should be able to. Like their defense keeps them in a game. Offense does just enough to win. I think that we'd see Tyrod probably stick in, possibly even a little bit longer.
Yeah, Philip Rivers had one of his worst years, his worst QBR going back to 2007 last year, over 20 interceptions. So if Tyrod could just hold on to the ball, you would think he'd be able to keep his job.
Exactly. I think as long as he can do that, right, and squeak out some wins here and there, he's going to, continue to hold that job. But again, if they start falling into a losing record, then I don't think that the Chargers have any reason not to pull that trigger.
What record do you think Tyrod would need to have in order to retain his job for the rest of the season?
I think if they at least stay 500 all the way up through there, I think that's okay. Because it's a lot to ask to have Tyrod completely turn it around. But I can also see the argument for if we're going to be 500, we might as well throw in our new shiny toy and see what we can get out of him. But I think as long as he could stay above 500, even if it's just slightly above 500, he's fine.
The last time we saw Tyrod Taylor, he had an 8-6 record as a starter out there in Buffalo. The team made it to the playoffs, the first time that they made it to the playoffs in 18 years prior to him getting there. And the only lone blight on the season was that he actually got replaced midseason for Nathan Peterman, who proceeded to throw the ball 5 times to the opposing team and get replaced by Tyrod again, middle of that game. We know that he's a competent NFL quarterback, but the question is, when you do have that guy that you drafted with your first overall pick, you want to see him play. Even in Green Bay, a situation where they have a generational talent like Aaron Rodgers, there's questions of if Jordan Love could potentially get on the field this year. According to the training camp rumors, probably not. Like I said, I think Justin Herbert's going to see playing time. I'm going to say week 6